All right, let's talk. We're sure you've heard from countless wedding professionals the same old do's and don'ts. Now it's time to get raw and give you some rarely discussed tips to help ensure that your planning process and your wedding is as stress-free as possible. Be sure to subscribe because this is my professional voice. And unless one of these tips makes me break character, I'll be talking like this for 20 minutes straight. All right, rule number 1. First and foremost, no wedding shaming. Don't let anyone make you feel bad for the kind of wedding you want. If you want a low-budget, no-frills wedding, no problem. If you want to send your measurements to France for a 6-figure wedding, then do your thing. As long as it's what you and your partner want, who cares what other people think? It's not their money and it's not their mate, so why do they care? I'll tell you why. Because they're what we in the United States like to call haters. The haters who shame others are usually people who want it but couldn't afford a luxurious wedding. Or the people who regret spending too much and wish they had a smaller wedding. So thumbs up if you prefer an upscale wedding on the pricey side. Comment below if you prefer a frugal, lower-end nuptial. And subscribe if you prefer something sweet in the middle. Rule number 2, and I cannot stress this enough, hire people that specialize in weddings. I used to complain about the hiked up prices for wedding services. However, we learned that there is a different care when it comes to weddings. You'll need that wedding DJ that understands when to properly cue music, coordinates well with the MC when it's time to make announcements, and is able to keep your guest on the dance floor. You'll need that wedding photographer or videographer that knows how to get those perfect angles, properly adjust lighting, and capture the most unforgettable moments of your wedding. You'll definitely need that day of wedding coordinator that handles the vendors and keeps your entire day going smoothly and timely. Premium service means premium price. Trust that it's worth it. If premium service is not in your budget, then be sure to assign a trusted friend or family member to the task. Take the time to write it out and go over all the specifics that would work. And be gracious and hope for the best. Remember, they're not experts, so don't set your expectations too high. Please note that we do not recommend this, but more on that later in this video. Rule number 3, buyer beware. Be cautious of the vendors that charge wedding premiums that aren't wedding vendors. Be thorough on your vetting process and be wary if their fee is too good to be true. Ask to see their past work by requesting their websites or social media accounts. Give them a scenario question. For example, to a DJ, I would probably ask, I'm having a wedding of 50 guests and I want them to dance the night away. How can you ensure that my dance floor won't be empty? If they don't have a quick plan of action, then that is not your DJ. Next, another red flag is if they don't have a wedding-specific contract or no contract at all, then most likely weddings aren't their main gig and you may want to steer clear. Remember, you are the one paying for these services, so a proper screening of potential vendors is a must. Rule number 4, we like to consider more of a tip than a rule, and this is about vendors and when to pay them. Vendors usually ask for a small portion up front, small enough to encourage you to lock in the deal, but large enough to keep you committed. However, final payment usually isn't due until right before your wedding day, and this could be from a month up to payment being due the day of. So we suggest not waiting until the deadline to pay the final amount. You'll already be dealing with enough last-minute expenses. No need to fret about having to dish out so much money at one time, especially on your wedding day. Rule number 5, and it's another tip, and it's actually about tips. Who to tip? We get this question often. Understand that most of your vendors are self-employed. Therefore, they have most likely already set their prices with gratuity included. Most likely, you're already paying a justifiable premium due to your event being a wedding. So the only vendors that we recommend tipping are your non-self-employed vendors, also known as vendors that work and are paid by a separate company. This is most likely your servers, bussers, and sometimes your bartenders. However, if you're feeling generous and you feel like one of your vendors went above and beyond to provide exceptional services, then feel free to tip whom you see fit. Now, we mentioned in rule number 2 that we do not recommend you hiring or putting your friends and family to work on your wedding day, especially if it's not their professional field. Which brings us to rule number 6. Now, this one may hurt some feelings, but it has to be said. Make sure your maid of honor or best man is reliable and resourceful over anything else. We all have that close friend or family member who we like and respect, but we know wouldn't be a good fit to stand by our side on our wedding day. Now, before you send the mob, allow me to explain. It's safe to say that only 1% of weddings go smoothly, fully according to plan, and without a hitch. 1%! That leaves 99% of weddings that experience hiccups and unexpected situations, from forgetting the rings to tripping over your veil. You need to ensure that as few mishaps occur as possible. Too often, bride and grooms choose their closest friends, but realize they made a big mistake because they forgot that their friend was a party animal that never shows up on time, or that their cousin is awesome, but a bit ditzy and self-absorbed. Come on, you know your people. And weddings are stressful enough. Your top priority should be selecting wedding party members that are level-headed, punctual, and able to keep their attention and focus on you. And if you can't handle hurting their feelings, for God's sake, at least don't make them your maid of honor or best man. By the way, it's always a bonus if you have someone by your side who has wedding planning experience. So choose wisely. Rule number 7, and not to be confused with rule number 2. You get what you pay for. Oh yes, this is too often too true, especially when it comes to weddings. It's not a coincidence that the free and super low-cost help that we hired on our wedding day, they didn't do the best job. This is why I cannot stress enough to make sure that your vendors are vetted properly. There's a reason why a photographer that charges $1,500 doesn't compare in quality to the photographer that charges $6,000. Everything may look great on paper, but if that fee is significantly less than the standard market fee for their service, be cautious. If the dress or suit that you're buying online is super cheap, give yourself enough time in advance for shipping so you can try it on. That way, if it's trash, then you'll have time to find alternatives. If the venue seems cheaper than average, inquire what is included with the venue. Go visit in person. Is it a safe neighborhood in the evenings? Is there adequate parking? There's always most likely a catch. We're not saying to break the bank or anything, but just try not to skimp out on what you feel are your most important items. Rule number 8, and you have to hear me out on this one. Contrary to popular belief, you will have a much better wedding if you accept and understand that it's not just about you two. Get good food, hire professional vendors, and make sure your guests are comfortable. Now, no one unprompted is going to tell you to your face that your wedding was trash. That is, unless you have one of those overstepping foot and mouth type of family members, but that's another topic. However, you know deep down when you've cut too many corners just to try to save a few bucks. If you don't want to feed your guests, be sure that they know well in advance before they RSVP. If the wedding is outdoors, just be sure to let the guests know what attire is suggested so they can dress properly. If it's a dry wedding, meaning no alcohol, no open bar, meaning no free alcohol, or religious weddings, where you have to sneak in the alcohol. Tell your guest, tell your guest, tell your guest. Overall, the people that you invite to your wedding are some of your dearest and best. Having happy wedding guests just helps keep the fond memories of your wedding everlasting. You'll spend months to years working on that one special day. So when it finally comes to pass, receiving messages from your loved ones about how awesome and wonderful your wedding was is priceless. And you can't say, "Oh, I don't care, all that matters is me and my partner." 'Cause if you didn't care about a ceremony, you would have saved money by getting married at the local courthouse and probably having dinner and music at home. So for those of us that do care about having a decent experience for ourselves and our guests, feed your guests. Spend a bit extra to make sure that they're comfortable. And if not, be considerate and inform them so they can plan, or not plan, accordingly. You can also consider lowering your wedding costs a lot by scaling down on your guest list, which brings me to the next rule. Rule number 9. If your guest list goes over 80, most likely there will be people there that you don't even care that much about. Now, I'm all for twirling on those haters. So if your budget allows for that school bully or that chump that said you would never amount to anything, then stunt and make them eat their hearts out. But if you're in need for cutting back on costs, then reducing your guest list is the best way to do so. Every vendor, venue, and most rentals, they will base their costs on the number of people attending your wedding. The less people attending, the less expensive overall. Trust us, it adds up. So consider inviting only the most important or relevant people to your wedding. You don't have to invite that distant cousin that you barely speak to, or that aunt that hasn't seen you in years. I mean, come on, who really knows 80 people like that? For many of us, that list is even less, and that is absolutely normal and okay. Want to shorten your guest count but not sure how? Here's a quick tip that may help you out. Number 10. Don't invite people that are drama prone or that you have unresolved issues with or are problematic. You know who they are, the ones who start trouble, the ones who make everything about them, the ones who think it's cute to be difficult in nature and just can't take one day off, my goodness. You can accept people for who they are, but you don't have to accept them in every space. Plus, you'll save some extra money and a lot of peace. Rule number 11. Wedding planning magically reveals who people really are. Quote-unquote friends will cancel last minute because they'd rather go to a birthday party. People who can't congratulate you just because they're more concerned about why they didn't get an invite. Family members who boycott your wedding because they don't approve. The list goes on. Fortunately, these revelations are often overshadowed by the great people that unexpectedly show up and go above and beyond to support you. We are definitely grateful for all the love and support we received on our special day. Just be aware that this is normal, and the best way to heal from the ones who hurt you is to hold close the ones who helped you. Rule number 12, and this is for you gift lovers out there. Be kind to everyone who shows up, but give much gratitude to people who give gifts or monetary support. Although personally, we think it's a bit rude to show up to a wedding without a gift, it's not a good vibe to judge. We don't always know what people may be going through. Some people aren't doing so great financially, and it may be a personal struggle for them to even show up in the first place. So instead of giving a cold shoulder to the guests who do not give a gift, be kind to them regardless, and be super appreciative to the ones who do give gifts. The gift giving, it takes thought, it takes time, and it takes money. And for those that do, they deserve a special place in your wedding memories. Rule number 13. Your wedding is for most your biggest day, but your best day is actually the day after. This is when you're usually the happiest, the most relaxed, accomplished, and at peace. Why? Because the month before the wedding, you'll probably be running around like a maniac, tying up loose ends and handling last-minute details. You and your partner will be so exhausted that although you two will enjoy your wedding, you'll enjoy waking up next to each other the day after even more. Rule number 14, be wary of friends or family members that offer to pay for large portions or all of your wedding. Weddings are pretty expensive, and I know some of us would love to have someone relieve that financial weight off of our shoulders. But be warned that quite often there are strings attached. So that super religious dad wants to buy your wedding dress? Watch out, because he may want to have say on how modest your gown should be. So that controlling aunt wants to pay for your reception? Careful, because she might feel entitled to have her input on how you should decorate and who you should invite. This could lead to tons of drama and a lot of hurt feelings, and possibly you being mislabeled as a bridezilla. So if you can't resist the offer, you'll need to have a conversation with them to discuss your desires and your boundaries. Make sure both parties have an understanding before accepting any amount of money. Matter of fact, make sure the conversation is via text or email. Hey, gotta get it in writing because people have a tendency to have convenient amnesia. What can I say? It's risky business. Otherwise, you'll have more peace and peace of mind if you and your partner pay for your own wedding expenses. Last but certainly not least, rule number 15. Before anything, before the venue, even before the budget, check your fiancé. What I mean is, you already said yes or popped the question. Make sure the person you are marrying is someone you would marry regardless of how perfect or imperfect your wedding is. Is your future spouse someone who can roll with the punches? Is your spouse someone who knows what they want in a wedding? Make sure that you both write down and discuss the things that are important to you so you can focus on those things initially. Because nothing is more stressful than arguing with your spouse during the planning process. Now, listing the things that are important to us initially is one thing that we failed to do. So towards the home stretch, we were at each other's throats. But fortunately, the one thing we did have in the bag was the fact that we were and are still madly in love with each other. And we would have married each other no matter how perfect or imperfect our wedding was. And thank goodness it was a 9.5 out of 10. So what are some interesting wedding stories that you'd like to share? Comment below because you may save a bride and groom some grief. Subscribe because it's recession friendly and free.